Hey guys, I'm trying to hit 10k subscribers by the end of the year and I think we can get there with your help, so please subscribe. It would honestly mean a lot to me. Now let's go right into the stories. I never thought I'd hear my father say, "They don't belong here," about my friends. Growing up, family dinners were my favorite. The kitchen would fill with the rich aromas of my mother's cooking, roasted chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, and her signature green bean casserole. The laughter of my parents, my younger brother Jake, and me echoed against the walls, each story and joke deepening our bond. But that evening, everything changed, and I learned just how fragile those bonds could be. It was a crisp autumn evening, the leaves swirling outside in vibrant reds and oranges. My parents had invited some family friends over for dinner. I had spent the afternoon cleaning up the house, a task I didn't mind at all because I knew the joy that came with gathering. But as the hour approached, I felt an undercurrent of tension brewing, a feeling I couldn't quite place. The doorbell rang, and I rushed to answer it. It was the Lopez family, Mr. and Mrs. Lopez and their 2 kids, Sophia and Marco, who were my best friends. We'd grown up together, spent countless summers at the community pool, and shared every secret a kid could have. My excitement was palpable. I ushered them in, and we all hugged. As we settled into the living room, my parents were bustling around the kitchen. The conversation flowed easily at first, filled with jokes and laughter. But I sensed a shift when my dad, sitting at the head of the table, leaned back in his chair, surveying the scene. His gaze fell on the Lopez family, and his expression darkened slightly. "Do you think they're going to do that again?" he asked, almost to himself, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "Do what?" I replied, confused. "You know, that thing they do at the community center every year. The cultural festival. It's all just a bunch of noise," he said, a hint of disdain in his voice. "Dad, it's a celebration of culture," I interjected, feeling a protective instinct for my friends rising. "It's important." "Yeah, but do we really need that here?" he replied, and I could see Mrs. Lopez's shoulders stiffen. "I just think we need to focus on our own traditions." The tension in the room escalated. My mom glanced at me, her eyes pleading for me to let it go. I took a deep breath, unsure how to respond. My father's views on immigration had always been contentious, but I had hoped he would at least show some kindness toward my friends, especially in our home. Dinner was served, and my mom's delicious cooking momentarily distracted us from the growing unease. The Lopez family complimented her cooking, and I felt a brief flicker of normalcy return. But my dad wasn't finished. "Honestly," he said, "I just don't understand why they're all coming here in the first place. America is for Americans, right? They should try harder to fit in instead of bringing their culture here." Silence engulfed the table. I felt my heart race. My friends were looking down at their plates, clearly hurt. I couldn't sit idly by. "Dad, that's not fair. They are Americans, too. Sophia and Marco were born here, just like us." He waved a dismissive hand. "Yeah, but their parents came from somewhere else, didn't they? They should be grateful for what they have." I felt heat rising in my cheeks. "They are grateful. They work hard, they contribute to the community, and they're our friends. Why can't you just accept that?" "Because it's not how it should be," he snapped, his voice rising. "They're taking jobs, resources. It's just not right." "Dad, this isn't about jobs. It's about people," I said, my voice shaking with emotion. "People we care about." My father's face hardened, and I felt like I was witnessing a side of him I had never seen before, one filled with anger and prejudice. "Well, maybe it's time you opened your eyes, son. The world isn't as simple as you think." I looked at my mother, who was staring down at her plate, tears glistening in her eyes. I felt a deep sorrow for her, knowing how hard she had worked to create a loving, inclusive environment. I wanted to scream, to make my father see how wrong he was. "Dad, I can't believe you're saying this," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "You're pushing away people who care about us. You're pushing away my friends." "Maybe you should rethink who you call your friends," he replied coldly. The tension hung heavy in the air, thickening with every moment. I could see Sophia and Marco exchange glances, their expressions a mix of hurt and confusion. I wanted to protect them, but I was paralyzed by disbelief. Dinner ended shortly after, with the awkward silence swallowing any semblance of normalcy. My parents began clearing the table, but I knew I couldn't stay. I felt a growing need to step outside, to escape the weight of the moment. I stepped onto the porch, the cool evening air hitting my face like a slap. I stared out into the darkness, trying to process what had just happened. I felt so many things: anger, betrayal, and deep sadness. My dad, the man who had taught me about kindness and respect, had just shown a side of himself that I never knew existed. A few moments later, I heard footsteps behind me. It was Sophia. She stood next to me, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to cause any trouble." I turned to her, feeling a wave of protectiveness. "This isn't your fault. My dad, he just doesn't understand. You and Marco are my friends, and I won't let him push you away." Sophia nodded, her expression a mix of hurt and resilience. "I wish things could be different. We just wanted to share our culture, to be part of the community." "Of course you are," I said, my voice firm. "You belong here. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." We stood there in silence for a moment, both of us grappling with the reality of the situation. Marco joined us soon after, and I could see the pain in his eyes. "I don't get why your dad is like that," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Neither do I replied. "But I won't let this be the end. We're going to change his mind, I promise." In that moment, I made a vow, not just to my friends, but to myself. I would confront my father, challenge his views, and work to create a more inclusive environment, not just in our family but in our community. I couldn't allow hatred to take root where love should flourish. Over the next few days, the atmosphere at home was tense. My father continued to make dismissive comments about immigration, and I fought to hold my tongue, knowing it would only lead to further arguments. Instead, I focused on spending time with Sophia and Marco, strengthening our bond. We organized a small gathering with friends, inviting others to celebrate our diverse backgrounds. On the night of the gathering, our living room was filled with laughter and warmth. We shared stories, played games, and sampled dishes from various cultures, a feast of flavors that reflected our unity. My mom watched from the sidelines, a proud smile on her face. As the night wound down, I felt a wave of contentment. I realized that while my father's views were deeply ingrained, they didn't have to dictate our family's values. We were building our own narrative, one rooted in acceptance and love. A week later, I gathered my courage and confronted my father again. I approached him after dinner when he was relaxing in his recliner, the TV flickering softly in the background. "Dad, can we talk?" I asked, my heart racing. He sighed, already anticipating the conversation. "What is it now?" "It's about the comments you made about Sophia and Marco," I said, taking a deep breath. "I need you to understand how hurtful those words were." He turned to me, his expression defensive. "I was just speaking my mind. You're too young to understand the real issues." "No, Dad," I said, standing my ground. "I understand perfectly. You're pushing away people who are important to me and who deserve respect. Just because they come from a different background doesn't make them less valuable." He scoffed. "They should assimilate if they want to fit in." "But they are fitting in," I insisted. "They are trying to share their culture, and that's something we should celebrate, not shun. You taught me to be kind and to respect others." "I didn't raise you to be a social justice warrior," he replied sharply. "I'm not a warrior. I'm just trying to stand up for what's right," I countered, my voice firm. "This isn't just about politics or beliefs. It's about people, friends who love and support each other." For a moment, we sat in silence, the weight of my words hanging in the air. I could see his defenses beginning to crumble, but he was still fighting against the internal battle raging within him. "I just don't want to see our way of life change," he said, his voice quieter now. "I worry about what that means for you." I softened, knowing his heart was in the right place, even if his views were misguided. "Dad, the world is changing, and that's okay. Embracing diversity doesn't mean losing our identity. It means expanding it. We can hold on to our traditions while welcoming others to share theirs." He looked at me, searching my eyes for sincerity. "I don't know if I can change," he admitted, his voice almost a whisper. "It's okay if it takes time," I replied gently. "But I hope you'll try. I hope you'll see that love and acceptance are stronger than fear and division." In that moment, I felt a flicker of hope. It wouldn't be easy, but I believed my father was capable of change. Together, we could work toward a better understanding, not just as a family, but as a community. Over the next few months, my dad gradually softened. He began to engage with Sophia and Marco, inviting them to family outings and learning about their backgrounds. It wasn't perfect, but the walls that had once seemed insurmountable began to crack. I remember one Saturday afternoon when we were all at the park. My dad asked Sophia about her favorite traditional dish, and to my surprise, he actually listened, genuinely interested. As I watched the two of them talk and laugh, I felt a surge of gratitude. I knew our journey wasn't over, but we were making progress, one conversation at a time. The family dinner that had once felt like a battlefield had transformed into a space of connection and understanding. I had learned that change often starts small, and the love we fostered as a family could push against the darkness of ignorance. In the end, we all had a choice, to build walls or bridges. I chose bridges, and I hoped my family would too. Together, we could create a legacy of acceptance and love that would echo through generations, reminding us that diversity is not a threat but a gift.